Welcome to this edition of BSW Tech Dive. I am John Lynch, Director of Business Development for Broadcast Supply Worldwide, BSWUSA.com. And our show, as always, comes to you through the facilities of HDV Mixer, available with BSW, and also the AirLink connection, which is what we're using to record this show, and featuring the brand new BSW AirCans headphones. 5 for $149. You'll like them. Our show today is on Omnia processing, and I want to welcome into the program the Director of Sales for Processing for Telos Alliance and Omnia. His name is Paul Kriegler, and Paul and I go back a long ways. And Paul, great to have you on the show, because we wanted to talk about Omnia, because you got the three elements there. You've got the 9, you got the 11, and you got the volt, and see if we can help people decide which would be a proper fit for them. Paul, welcome to BSW Tech Dive. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, John. Thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Now, what can you say, first of all, what we call the entry level would be the Omnia Volt, but it's a little bit more than that.
Yeah, customers, I had a radio station that the last station where I was an operations manager, their engineer loved the Omnia 1 and the Omnia Volt both. Because if you've got an AM or an FM station, especially if you've got an AM station somewhere, he always used to joke that, he was always miserable with his AM stations. And it was good just to have an Omnia 1 or a Volt, which is what the Omnia 1 later became, on the shelf, just because you never know when you'll have that need. And it takes 10 minutes to change the software once you've got a Volt on a network. So you can make an FM processor, an FM Volt can become an AM Volt, an AM Volt can become a stereo generator Volt or an HD Volt very, very quickly.
And today's broadcast environment, where we're dealing with AMs, with FM translators, with all the streaming that's going on, that could get repurposed several times in its lifetime.
Correct. We had an Omnia Volt that went out to a couple different AM sites to keep them on the air when their older AM processors were dying. That's the AM Volt, and it can be ordered from the factory as an AM or an HD version, so you can get what you need right out of the factory. But typically what I see customers do is just buy the FM version and change the software as they need it. It's a great value still.
And, of course, it is a nice low price, very easy to get into, available, of course, from BSW and BSWUSA.com. From a Volt standpoint, can you kind of give us an idea of what the customers should be experiencing after they've installed it once everything's dialed in?
Well, if a customer is coming from audio, a lot of times what we'll hear is a customer has an audio processor that may have lost its screen, or it could be even one of ours, where it's on its last legs. It's 15 or 20 years old. Stations sometimes in smaller markets will gravitate towards the Volt. What they'll notice right away is a sound that'll get them right in the ballpark of where an Omnia 6 would be. And that would be what I think they could expect right off the bat. Plus, they get our excellent support and our presets to get them started.
Omnia 6 was no slouch.
No slouch. We sold tons of those. In fact, customers still have them on the air all over the place, and they don't want to give them up too easily.
They're kind of possessive that way.
They still sound great.
Yes.
Well, my advice to a customer, though, just for a customer that has one of those older boxes that could die at any moment, treat it like it's in hospice. Just treat it like it's on life support. You don't want to make any sudden noises around it. Right. Tiptoe, keep it on power, that sort of stuff. Anyway.
Now, of course, that's, like I say, entry-level Volt, replacing older models as such in a lot of different stations, mostly the stations that would hire me back in the day when I was on the air. That was in another century, of course. But anyway, the Omnia 9 and the Omnia 11, that brings up a question of, okay, which one? There you go, Paul.
So if I had an Omnia 6, the Omnia 11 is in fact what the sound lineage became. That's the Omnia 11. If a customer is doing HD FM with an Omnia 6 in a heartbeat, I would suggest just get an Omnia 11 because it's going to sound like a bigger, more impressive, cleaner version. Definitely bigger. The 6 had a constricted sound to it, as good as the 6 could sound. I know a lot of real competitive program directors that like to push them beyond their means.
No.
Yeah, and the 6 is much more capable of standing up to what today's music and what today's program directors demand out of good FM HD audio processing, to me more so than a 6. But I'd still keep a 6 as a backup in a heartbeat. But I would recommend a 6 to that customer, to the customer who's got a 6. I would in a heartbeat recommend an 11.
Now, before you go further,
Yeah.
if somebody's got a 6 and they have a preset that they built that they really like, can they move that to the Omnia 11, or do they need to recreate it in the Omnia 11?
They'll need to recreate that in the Omnia 11. It's a totally different processing platform. Just like the Omnia 9 is a totally different processing platform than, say, the Volt.
Okay.
They're all quite different.
Got it.
If you're coming from a 6, though, based on Mark Manoli on our support department and my experience with audio processing, we could probably come up with something that would be sort of similar. But what I would advise to a customer is get an Omnia 11 and try the 10 or 15 different presets that you think might right off the bat make sense for your format, or just try different presets and see what you think. Try the one that you think has the best EQ fit, and from that point I can guide a customer, or a support department can easily guide a customer to turn up the clipping or turn up the loudness or turn down the loudness. It's a matter of how does this sound on your given program material. See, lots of people online talk about how, I listen to this music to adjust, or I listen to this song over and over to adjust audio processing. Well, you better be listening to whatever music that radio station is going to be broadcasting,
Yeah,
because
good
that's the target.
Now, let's drift over to the Omnia 9, because that you're talking about there is a different platform, shall we say, than the 11. And so there's an awful lot going in there, a lot of different licensing that can be done with the Omnia line for different features like PPM licensing and things like that. Let's talk about the 9.
Omnia 9 is the most fully featured audio processor that has ever been produced for broadcast. It can do HD 1, 2, and 3 all at the same time. It can stream from each one of those HD cores if you so choose. It can also be a dual FM HD audio processor, where it can do 2 FM HD channels in one box.
Wow.
So if you think that the price of an Omnia 9 has been too steep for you in the past, you might want to come back and take a look at that, because especially if you're doing 2 stations and they're both doing HD, price-wise, I can make an Omnia 9 really make sense.
Wait a minute. You said if they're both doing HD. Does that HD 1, 2, and 3 on both stations?
No, even if they're not.
Okay.
So an Omnia 9 can either do 2 FM HD stations at once. That's doing 2 FM separate radio stations at once.
Okay.
Or it can do 1 FM station, the HD 1 that goes with that FM station, plus HD 2 and 3. It could do one or the other, but it has to be purchased and configured as such and licensed as such. But if it's doing the dual FM HD option, like I discussed, that makes sense for stations that might have 2 HD FM stations, or just 2 FM stations, because price-wise you can justify it across 2 stations.
One thing that some people don't take enough advantage of, I am guilty of that myself, is you can really get good answers and quickly, not by dialing the phone, but by sending an email to support@telosalliance.com. And Mark, who you referred to, and others can respond quickly there. In fact, you can usually get a hold of them that way quicker than being on hold on the phone or something like that, and get a good, well-researched answer right away.
Frank Foti was a great engineer, so he's hired some folks in Cleveland. We've got a new guy named Ludwig, who's a German guy, so he's a good engineer because he's from Germany. hate their cars, but no, I'm just kidding. So no, listen, Ludwig is fantastic. He's the newest guy that we got in our support department. He knows a ton about Omnia, and he likes to help customers just like I do. So you've got people that still use these boxes. You're not just talking to somebody who's filling a support role somewhere. We use and love these boxes every day. Use them. Mark Manolio's got a college station that he takes care of in Cleveland. So, and I know that he's got a 9SG and probably an 11 on the station that he takes care of.
Now, you mentioned the 9SG. Let's talk about that for a moment.
Well, I want to come back to the 9 about the fact that it
Okay.
can also do AM, because the most powerful AM audio processor is a 9. I'll come back to that. But
Okay.
the Omnia 9SG, I'm glad you brought it up, John. The 9SG was really made to be paired with an Omnia 9. Say you're in a large market where you're in a situation where you're doing HD1, HD2, HD3, and then you add watermarking on top of that. There's a lot of AES cabling that's going to go into this. And Omnia 9, because it can do the Nielsen watermarking natively inside the box, and it can do up to 3 HD channels at once, literally an entire 6-foot rack of gear that you would previously use to do everything that I just described in a big market. You could have your Omnia 9 at the studio, 3.5 rack units tall, and then at the transmitter site, the Omnia 9SG was designed to be the endpoint for that processor. In fact, the Omnia 9SG also has local processing that can be added into it. It does AES 192 for customers that have the newest transmitters and want to take advantage of that. Which is to me a real winning strategy is running digital composite to your newest transmitters if you got them. 9SG adheres to the RDS adheres to all the latest standards. And the local processing option, you're going to be really hard pressed. In fact, I can't tell the difference between a 9SG if the local audio processing is turned on, compared to an Omnia 9. It's pretty difficult to tell. Omnia 9SG has its own 4-band audio processing built in, and it sounds fantastic. So customers that are on a budget that want to have a sound like an Omnia 9, I would say the Omnia 9SG is like a Omnia 9 Junior. I can get them a demo of those. Demos are always free in Omnia land. Sorry, my dog's here at my feet. She's biting me.
It's part of working out of the home office anymore.
Yes, sorry.
So there you go. Not a problem. But hey, you brought up a very important pair of letters to me, because that's where I was for 20 years on radio, AM, and the Omnia 9. Pick that up, please.
So anytime we ship an Omnia 9, it does AM and FM right out of the box. So you unbox it, and all you have to do is turn on the AM option. It's free. It's not nothing you have to pay extra for. Any base Omnia 9 unit's a simulcast unit, so you can do both. I've had customers call me back and say it's actually in what they would call done something like along the lines of increase the stick value, where places that they haven't heard the signal in places of Manhattan, where we've gone up against the competitor's XPN audio processor, and they're saying that they can get the station in places where they haven't been able to get it with the competitor's box, and that's always kind of a slippery hill, I think, sometimes on AM to talk about technically, but I'll be willing to do a shootout and prove it.
Well,
just let me know.
We'll set it up. Not a problem. That'd be great, because I love having the Omnia product with us. BSW has been with the Telos and Omnia grouping for actually since before I came here, but that was a long time ago. So anyway, but from and that's such an important thing that you're talking about, because so much has impacted from outside, like these power supplies and lighting and all, because that fouls up signal strength in certain areas for AM stations, and being able to overcome that with the Omnia 9 on an AM, that's huge.
So what it is the Omnia 9 has an FFT clipper that no other audio processor has, that's in a hardware box. Well, that's not true. not one that we make.
There you
The
go.
Omnia 9 and the 9SG are the only two processors that we make that have an FFT clipper at this point. Stands for fast Fourier type of clipper. If you think of, instead of a clipper, a traditional clipper design, in layman's terms, I would describe it as like it's almost like a 30 or 40 band super fast limiter slash clipper, meaning that because it has limiter and clipping characteristics in what it does, it's cleaner. So one of the benefits that the Omnia 9 has is that on voice and sometimes on sibilance and difficult things to process like horns, especially with the undo section turned on, you can clean up some audio with an Omnia 9. But then on AM, if you start with good source material, I can make an AM signal sound so good with a 9 in AM mode.
And available from BSW.
We have everything in stock right now.
So there's no waiting. You call your favorite BSW sales rep at the phone number at the top of the screen, 800-426-8434, or you can email us. You can also email to bswusa.com, or go to the website and take a look. Take a look at the page for Omnia Volt, Omnia 9, Omnia 11.
Tell John you want a free demo. Tell John you want a free demo, and I'll get you a free demo.
Heck, if you tell any of the other sales reps they want a free demo, that's fine too. We'll take care of it. Not a problem. But that's how, I've always appreciated that in this business, because how you going to know what it sounds like till you put it on? Now, Paul, with that clipper, one of the great things you talked about is something that's been a problem for so many years on the AM band: lighting, power supplies for computers, and all kinds of other outside influences fouling up the signal for an AM radio station. And now you're able to overcome that, and that's part of the effort of getting into areas that you should be able to serve, but these outside influences have made it impossible over the last few decades.
The FFT clipper that's in the Omnia 9 and the 9SG serves as a fast-acting limiter and clipper. So it's super clean. And what some program directors, and I'm a former program director myself, what I've noticed some program directors, when they get an Omnia 9, what they'll do is they'll immediately drive it like they've gotten an Italian sports car, not a German one, but a real fancy Italian one that's super expensive and can go from 0 to 100 in just 4 or 5 seconds. And so in other words, they're taking their Omnia 9 and they're making it really, really loud. They're taking advantage of the fact that that clipper is capable of taking a FM signal, and you can be really, really loud with an Omnia 9 if you so choose. What that does and how that lends itself to AM is that AM processing, to me, is you're trying to create this intense density that still sounds good. And that's where the FFT clipper really lends itself to AM audio processing, because one, we can't mash everything. It still has to be kept clean. So that FFT clipper, coming back to it, is the cleanest clipper that you're going to find in any audio processor. It's in the 9 and the 9SG. And that's why I also like using the 9SG with an Omnia 11. If you ever want to play processing sometime, I'll be happy to. That's another conversation. but that's why the 9 is to me fills in a signal, because you can really, really pack an AM signal. And when you're and it's not just, it's about packing it well. You can't just pack a signal just to pack it, because that's where you get into distortion. And Frank's more the processing expert. I just use layman's terms. Oh, before we go, let's talk about streaming, John. We've got 3 streaming options for customers for processing as far as software goes. Then we've got the ZipStream R20, which we can put 3 types of audio processing on. But what I usually tell customers, my 10-second elevator speech is, if you've got an AM, FM, HD station, if you do streaming, I'm your guy to call from Omnia. I can not just sell you something, I can also help you set it up and get the best sound with it too. But the streaming product, ZipStream, if you've got an old ZipStream X2 license, still for a limited time we've extended this where you can upgrade to the latest ZipStream X20 encoder set. So if you've, all I have to do is give John the license from the license screen, and we can get you started. Um, and then as far as the R2 goes, the R2 hardware unit, that's gotten a refresh. It's now the R20. If you've got an R2 unit, that's a free upgrade. We'll need the serial number and the licenses that you've got on the Zipstream R2 unit, and we can make that an R20 unit for free for a limited time only.
What are the advantages of going from R2 to R20, for example?
Newer encoders. So we're always getting the latest encoder sets from Fraunhofer. There's other changes to the HLS encoder set that we've made. Nielsen encoding is supported in this option. So if you want to do Nielsen encoding for your stream, you can do that as well. We've added the Forza processing option to this instance of R20 and Zipstream R20, or X20, where Forza, for an additional $1,200, you get 5-band audio processing for your stream, and it sounds incredible.
Paul, been great to have you on the show. Very informative, really good information.
Thank you,
Remember
John.
that you can always get a hold of the support people at Telos Alliance, support@telosalliance.com. You can contact us at BSW 800-426-8434 or bswusa.com. Connect with your favorite BSW sales rep. Paul was talking about getting a free demo. Yes, we can set that up for you. Not a problem. Glad to do it because, like I said, how do you really know until you put it on the air? Well, that's the whole point of doing the free demo and then getting their technical assistance while you're doing the demo to get the sound exactly the way you want it. Paul, great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm John Lynch, along with Paul Kriegler from Telos Alliance. We thank you for joining us for this edition of BSW Tech Dive, and we'll see you next time.